I'm very pleased and honored to having the opportunity to share my considerations with you today. And first, I have to share my PowerPoint presentation, and I hope it works because I have to share slides and sound, but I think it will work. It just takes a second that you can see the full screen. Yeah, I hope you can see it. My name is Herrmann-Fertig, and I'm, as you already heard, I'm a researcher, a music researcher, socialized and working in Germany with a focus on ethnomusicology. Today, I'm presenting a work in progress, which is important to emphasize, that is related to my postdoctoral research project. My contribution, therefore, is clearly part of the academia component of the Animal Futures Conference. During several ethnomusicological field trips to South India, I encountered a phenomenon called theyyam, which induced me to critically rethink my ethnomusicological work in connection with human animal studies and animal rights in the academic field, the broad field of music research. It made me feel the need to expand current approaches at this interface of academic disciplines to sensitize the scientific community as well as the general public to conscious listening to a diversity of voices, human and non-human, that form the everyday particular soundscape of a place. My starting point is that along with the ongoing climate crisis and the multiplicity of crises that we have to face in the 21st century, scientists from different disciplines are discussing why we should understand the Anthropocene as a permanent state of emergency for other than human beings. In my opinion, to find an answer to this question, it is interesting or even necessary to consider opinions and arguments that are currently discussed in natural sciences as well as religious studies, and finally to continue the discussions from an ethnomusicological perspective. For today, I have chosen the aspect of religious worldviews and practices as they consider nature as a revealing context for a sensitization to questions about humankind's role in relation to cross-species life processes. This leads to fundamental questions of equality and debates about what arguments exist for including non-human animal voices, as well as the whole soundscape of a particular place, which is closely linked to the relationship of the living being listening to it with his or her environment. So far, there is a lack of ethnomusicological studies and thus perspectives, voices, and advice, as the environment's acoustic dimensions have thus far received little consideration in discussions of climate change, human and non-human animal health, and multi-species well-being, etc. And in a time when vegan orchestras are still a long way off. My hypothesis is that sound, musics that I understand as special cases of sound as organized sound, and soundscapes can thus be used to examine human as well as non-human animals and further living beings in times of crisis, and to sensitize us for the relevance of conscious listening that we have to learn again in times of the disappearance of sounds and sound or even noise pollution at the same time. Today, as we already heard, I would like to introduce a case study on theyyam, that is a Hindu ritual that contains special significance for people living in rural areas in southern India, more precisely in North Kerala, in Kannur and Kasaragod districts, as you can see on the map on the right. Many people in the region live from agriculture, and non-human animals, including their specific sounds, play a decisive role in daily life. Theyyam represents their cultural heritage that is still valid today. And in the research literature, theyyam is described as a sonic identification mark, and thus as a particular soundscape inextricably linked to North Kerala as a concern for the environment, as an opportunity for begging for well-being and for pronouncing burdensome concerns in and through sound. What we will examine is the interdependence of human, non-human animals and ecosystems as they are reflected in the soundscape of theyyam rituals. The starting point for me, being an ethnomusicologist, is the fact that there is no generally accepted term or concept of music worldwide. In addition, the widespread assumptions exist in the Western understanding of the term that being able to make and receive music is a human privilege. This fact highly influences human hearing and listening, and in particular, the work of ethnomusicologists. I emphasize the work of ethnomusicologists at this point, as a common definition of our work is that we study music making as human expression and social behavior in and across diverse cultures around the world to better understand cultural dynamics and social phenomena. But in order to break down this human-made dichotomy, it is necessary to decide on a term that allows sounds produced by other than human beings and the environment to be included of the same value in an ethnomusicological study. In technical terms, I examine the respective anthrophony, biophony, and geophony of particular places that create unique acoustical patterns. My contribution therefore focuses on soundscapes, as we can understand them as meaningful, as an environmental resource, and the quality of the acoustic environment is crucial for the well-being of various species. The academic field of music research, in which scholars have just recently begun to sustainably address the role of sound and musical phenomena in solving and exacerbating social, economic, political, and ecological problems, is called ecomusicology. The approaches of ecomusicology are based on the idea of soundscape, in the broad definition as sonic environment that makes up the acoustic imprinting and design of a place. Therefore, the necessity of listening and a sensitization to it must be re-examined, especially to critically rethink our relationship to other species as well as the ecosystem, and to make it less exploitative. Conscious listening to a broad range of soundscape layers can enhance our understanding of how humans affect ecosystems, as soundscapes can be understood as an ecosystem service representing the heritage of our planet's acoustic biodiversity. The second component you can already see here of my theoretical basis is human-animal studies. We already heard some words about human-animal studies, so I will just give a small introduction. Human-animal studies means research on cultural and social meanings of non-human animals, their relationship and interactions with humans, questions of animal rights, and the social construction of non-human animals. This is accompanied by a repositioning of non-human and human animals within social and religious structures, as well as of references to and aesthetic questions of human and non-human animal sound production in my case, which makes the combination of human-animal studies and ethnomusicological research highly relevant in my opinion. But the component missing so far in academic endeavors is the emphasis on a term that I have already used today, the emphasis on conscious listening, because world religions each offer a unique pool of moral values, rules, and thus soundscapes that can give people a voice in times of crisis. We will have a closer look at components of rural Hinduism today for my case study on theyyam. That is one of the richest ritual, mythical, and performative traditions of South Indian popular worship, associated with rural Hinduism, especially with its folk and tribal religious aspects. Hinduism is to be understood as a collective term for a pluralistic, complex appearance, a variety of religious communities, practices, and beliefs, which cause different attitudes toward non-human animals and the ecosystem. From this diversity, I chose the case study on theyyam because it can be considered representative of a number of South Indian rituals and forms of worship that can be located in rural Hinduism. In addition, it has unique features that one can study in ethnomusicological terms. Through various scriptures, Hinduism created a system of moral guidelines for the preservation and protection of the environment. This can define the relationship of people to non-human animals and nature, and can shape their traditional attitude towards the entire ecosystem in a friendly and respectful, or in a very anthropocentric way. One may say that Hindus today have started to focus on sacred texts, and many search for answers to environmental crises, including the treatment of non-human animals. Furthermore, various forms of environmental activism in the 21st century use religious cultural concepts as sources of inspiration and guidance. A striking example from the beginning of the 20th century is a quote by Mahatma Gandhi. The context of Gandhi's statement is Gomata. We can translate it into mother cow. Gandhi wrote in the English weekly journal called Young India, I quote, "The central fact of Hinduism is cow protection. Cow protection to me is one of the most wonderful phenomena in human evolution. It takes the human being beyond this species. Why the cow was selected for apotheosis is obvious to me. The cow was in India the best companion," unquote. The starting point for me, or my considerations, is that there are sacred animals that appear as a divine being in non-human animal form or with animal characteristics, including their particular sounds in Hinduism. Furthermore, the divine beings in non-human animal forms are not completely separated from the living species they represent. Gods and goddesses often have close relationships with them. For example, as a companion animal, a vehicle, a mount, or as their representations in theriomorphic forms. In a further step, that means that non-human animals have souls, just as do humans for some Hindus. And since many gods and goddesses manifested themselves in natural phenomena, most Hindus receive divinity in various aspects of nature, in mountains, rivers, trees, and the entire universe. And they are linked to nature in a religious sense, as well as in a holistic relationship. According to one of the interpretations of Hindu scriptures, people must therefore not demand or command dominion over the living beings. Hindu religion thus demands veneration, respect, and obedience to maintain and protect the natural harmonious unity of God and nature, that is further demonstrated by a series of divine incarnations, as for example, Karan Singh states, I quote again, "The evolution of life on this planet is symbolized by a series of divine incarnations, beginning with fish, moving through amphibious forms and mammals, and then on into human incarnations. This view clearly holds that man did not spring fully formed to dominate the lesser life forms, but rather evolved out of these forms itself, and is therefore integrally linked to the whole of creation," unquote. Although various texts and practices which extol the protection of the earth do exist, several centuries of colonial rule, industrialization, and increasing human numbers, for naming just a few aspects, have led to extensive pollution and denigration of India's environment. North Kerala is nowadays grappling with a whole string of social and cultural upheavals, rural exodus, and climate problems that also affect non-human animals. And these tensions find expression in theyyam. I will now demonstrate some selected aspects of the soundscape of theyyam from a multi-species perspective. Crucial aspects of Hinduism, such as reincarnation, karma theory, non-injury, and the associated demand for empathy between different species, play a fundamental role in South Indian rituals. An example for the consideration of these aspects and their particular soundscape is theyyam, that is a centuries-old, indispensable part of the beliefs of North Kerala, performed by so-called scheduled castes and tribes of the region. I'm aware that the term scheduled castes and tribes should be used with caution. Theyyam A South Indian ritual theater in the context of rural Hinduism emphasizes the dependence of people on their physical as well as social environment and their tackling with the environment, indicators of humankind's strong relationships to other species as well as the specific ecosystem. In the Theyyam context, media of locally worshipped deities as well as of spirits, heroes, and non-human animals enable a visual and acoustic, easily accessible revelation of the respective deity through transformation. As incarnate deity, the media bestow blessings. Their basic intention is to ensure health and well-being for human as well as non-human animals and agricultural productivity. A first evaluation of the audio and audiovisual material I collected and of what people told me during my ethnomusicological fieldwork trips to North Kerala in 2017 and 2019 can be as follows. One can define the roles of sound and musical phenomena as essential and inseparable components of the ritual, present throughout Theyyam and assuming decisive functions. From the perspective of multi-species research, one can determine that in these rituals, non-human animals are attributed an increased ability to act. A Theyyam-specific example is Totam songs. Totam or Toram songs are descriptive narrative songs. We can understand them as mirrors of social and cultural life, a catalyst that is oriented towards the current needs of the villagers who are participants, believers in Theyyam rituals. They emphasize humankind's dependence on the physical and social environment. And a selected Totam song describes Bhadrakali, a deity worshipped in Hinduism, especially in South India, making various references to non-human animals and even to a specific aspect of environmental sound. Its English translation, as it was published by Balanambia, reads as follows. I quote again. She who is wearing wild elephants as earrings, wearing snakes as rings and bangles, holding a handsword, Vattakam and trident, screaming like the sound of the stormy sea. She charges forward to kill the angry Asura, unquote. From an analytical point of view, the following can be stated. The medium, the Theyyam medium, gives the scheduled castes and tribes a voice and bridges the divine with the human, the country with the people, the hidden with the present. Furthermore, the costumes and makeup of the media are made from local and regionally available materials. This also applies to the musical instruments which are used in Theyyam rituals. Birdsong marks the sunrise and thus highlights in the ritual, and the rustling of the palm trees in harmony with the metal bracelets of the medium make up the particular ritual sound. Now, I would like to invite you to consciously listen to some Theyyam-specific soundscape layers. I deliberately do not use video so that you can concentrate on consciously listening, and I hope you can hear it very well. Recognizing and interpreting these components of theyyam performances is only possible through increased attention to hearing and listening in particular on a multi-species level. The entire realization of the ritual would be impossible without material provided by the environment, without the sounds of the environment, and without a unique pool of tradition, moral values, and rules that rural Hinduism provides as well as demands, and that guides people in their relationship with non-human animals as well as the environment. It demonstrates connections between the acoustic environment and animals, and the supernatural become actors, including their agency. We can summarize that North Kerala's numerous problems that affect human and non-human animals are reflected in the soundscape of theyyam. In conclusion, I would like to formulate some of these problems as questions that will outline my further ideas of the work in progress that I shared today. These questions are intended to sensitize us for the relevance and the urgent need to rethink our relationship to other species and ecosystems, as natural sounds can be understood as our auditory link to nature. What if, due to rural exodus, media of the gods and goddesses and human as well as non-human animals that are necessary for the realization of theyyam rituals are missing? What if the further extensive exploitation of the land makes agriculture impossible? Palm trees are felled and the region loses non-human animals, habitat, and soundscapes that have shaped it for thousands of years. What if theyyam media lose their voice? The soundscape of the ritual falls silent. Believers no longer have a possibility to give voice to their inner fire and to have any hope for improvement. What if discussions in the field of animal ethics speak against some components that are indispensable for the realization of theyyam rituals? And the last question, what if sound and noise pollution irreparably overlay the healing soundscape that makes up North Kerala as a home for human and non-human animals, and living beings are more and more deprived of the opportunity to listen on a multi-species level? Ethnomusicology's task, in combination with ecomusicology and human-animal studies, is to develop new methods, to educate the public about the importance of soundscapes, and to sensitize people to conscious listening to a diversity of voices on a multi-species level. This is important as soundscapes and musical practices understood as specific soundscape layers reflect, inform, shape, and structure societies, and can thus be used to give transformation as well as protest a voice. Thank you very much for listening, and here is a selection of the most important references